I'll be speaking with my colleague Amanda White to discuss the concept of being versus doing in influencing and guiding your own leader approach. So this is episode 2 of the Connected Approach podcast. In episode 1, you really took the interviewer seat and you were talking to me about my perspectives on the connected approach, the leader approach. And I wanted to, for episode 2, just sort of turn the tables and talk to you about your perspectives on this. And I think between the last time we spoke and this episode, you've had your own experiences with clients and
right.
both sharing your perspectives on the leader approach and then also evolving your own thinking on this. So I was just hoping you could share that for this episode.
I love how just everything starts to align, when we get that positive momentum going and in the work that we're wanting to do with each other. And it just was that moment of like, this is exactly what we're talking about. But earlier this week, I had a coaching client and we're getting ready to go into a process that we do called stakeholder feedback calls. And so in prep for that, we were talking about, what is it that she wants to get from the feedback, kind of, making sure that the questions that we had and that we were asking were going to be, getting at what she was wanting. And she said, well, my main focus from the feedback or what I really want to gain is how is my approach, which I was like, well, this is interesting because that's exactly what, is the thing that we want to be focused on. But my question back to her was, because she's an up and comer, just crazy intelligent. And one of these kind of similar to what we talked about, last week, just all over the doing. And I said, well, I think that is a great area to focus in on as far as what you're getting feedback on. So what are you hoping to get feedback on? Like, what is your approach? And she was like, that's a great question. I don't know. So, it kind of gets to, if you're not focusing on what it is, so we went into this whole conversation, which really helped. I mean, as I was going through it, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta, share this with Chris, because I said, what is that fingerprint that you want to leave on the people that you talk to or on your team or on the organization? Do you know what it is that is your personal brand, that you want to be known for, that is really about how you are being with individuals. And because I said, you got the doing, you're all about the doing. So is the feedback that like you're a rock star and that you're doing all kinds of great things, or is the feedback that you really want about like, she's a caring person, she really listens, I feel trust that I can really work through hard things with her as a business partner, what are those things? And so it for me, I am so aligned to this work that we're doing as far as the leader approach, because it really is the differentiator that, and I think it's an afterthought, as you're coming up through the organization, you really are rewarded and recognized and promoted on the doing. And then you get to this point where it becomes like a huge focus on the how. And sometimes people kind of fall out because that's when you start to hear like, sharp elbows, they trample over people, like, they're, whatever the word is. So trying to work with individuals even earlier in career to really be clear about how, which is the approach, is really cool. That I'm seeing is where I focus a lot of my time on the coaching side, but where we're also focusing a lot of time, meeting with leadership staffs or doing training or development programs or whatever. So yeah, it was fun to go through that with her and be completely aligned with the work that we're doing.
You had described it to me previously and in short form as being versus doing,
Yeah,
which I think is such a compelling concept.
yeah,
And it's so um, much of an opportunity and also a challenge for uh, an up and comer, as you described, because so much of your life leading into your professional experience and who you want to be as a professional is about doing,
right.
being an academic,
Yeah,
being someone that can, do the top on a test.
right,
It's about what you're getting done as opposed to who you are.
right.
And so from 5 to 22 or 5 to 28, depending on how
Yeah,
long your academic cycle is, it's about what did you score? What did you
yeah,
do? And then you arrive somewhere, and the question
yeah,
becomes, what are you going to be to
right.
others? And that's a whole new
Yes,
flip
yeah,
to
yeah,
folks. So that thought about not what do you do, but who are you going to be, or who are you? How do you,
yeah,
is such a compelling concept.
right.
What was the client's reaction to that perspective of it's no longer about doing, it's
Yeah,
about being?
yeah. I mean, the light bulb was going off, and I gave the example last time. Like when it was said to me, I was like, "I'm sorry, like, what did you just say?" Like being versus doing, it like made my eyes twitch. Like, and she kind of went through the same thing. She was like, it was almost like she said, "I've asked for this feedback, but now you've very quickly asked me a question to say, well, what is that you are hoping that you get as feedback as far as your approach?" And it was like, I have no idea. She was, I think, still wanting the feedback on, I'm a rock star and I get things done and I do this and I do that. Well, that's a different question. So we spent a lot of the time going through, just I always take notes, and I was just kind of like scribbling all over the place, and just even different tools and practices, because she was kind of like, I don't know how to make that. I'm really needing to think about this, so you can't just be like, oh, okay, you just introduced this to me, being versus doing, and now like I'm just going to go start being. It's like, well, what is that? And it gets to your very point, Chris. It does get into this inner kind of curiosity and inner work on, well, first of all, I need to understand, who am I need to understand, like, you know, what do I stand for? What is my personal brand or my values? Like, if I'm, 30 years from now and I'm hearing, like, people share their thoughts on me at my retirement party or whatever, like, what do I want people to say about me? As how I was, how I impacted, or how I interacted with them, or was it that she always got shit done, or is it like she was always there for me? I trusted to be able to have, like, conversations. I would follow her anywhere, or him, so she got it because she's extremely intelligent, but it was a little bit like, I really need to think about this, which is the work that I think leaders really do. And I think, just in you thinking about the leaders that you've already talked to, I think there is this point that kind of like grabs them to say, oof, this is the space I need to get into because I need to differentiate myself, or I'm at a position or a level now that I need to really like what was working. It's that book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Right.
It's interesting because thinking about individual coaching,
Yeah.
our roles are to ask the questions that can provide resonance, that can
Right.
create not provide, but create resonance for the coachee, for the client. And sometimes, as we know, they do want to stay right snorkel level as
Right.
opposed to scuba
Yeah.
level, and they want to remain focused on the do, given their to-do list coming
Right.
into coaching
Right.
or what others have told them about coaching.
Yeah. Because it's comfortable.
How Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's
Yes,
more
say your
comfortable, right?
perspectives
It's
on that.
uncomfortable because she's like, oh, and I'm saying, I mean, this is every conversation almost practically that I have, so I'm referring to this one individual, but it's like, I mean, it's just on repeat, with the different clients that we have. And it's uncomfortable, I mean, to really, because the human side of things where you're trying to like figure out who you are and then how to connect people and how to be, that's hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it may be the nature of when we were joining large organizations at the beginning of the 2000s,
Yeah.
and the feeling from our our parents, the folks that were senior in the organization at that time, was it is all about do what
Right.
you do for your employer. And so it's like, put your head down and do. They want you to do. And it's so true. You are required to demonstrate what you do and the fact that you're able to get stuff done.
Hmm.
And in the process of that, even if you have a natural inclination to be,
Yeah.
what what's not needed, at least initially, is for you to be, because
Yeah.
then people say, great person, great presence, has the ability to connect with others, and
Yeah.
others want to be connected to them and working with them. It's very strong and very powerful. You just can't start by only being.
Right.
And so, from my own perspective, it started off by um, having to suppress the be in order to demonstrate the do.
Right.
The danger in that is that you can completely bury or kill the bee as you're just doing. And
Right.
to your point, there's kind of this light bulb moment when you're uh, building a staff, whether that's in a project basis or you're actually told, hey, for the first time, you're going to become a manager of people, that you almost have to like crank open the casket
Right.
on the bee of like, oh, we really need this being to be more and more of who you are for our organization. And sometimes that's a hard thing to bring
Abs-
back to light.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to say this when we would have individuals that were just rising stars, high potentials within the organization. And it was like, because they could be trusted and relied on for the project or the program or getting things done. And then they get to a certain point, and then it's like, and I'm like, yeah, but we conditioned. This is on us as the organization, as the leadership team, because we've conditioned and recognized them to be this way. And so they don't, and we don't have the tools, a lot of times within the organization, the leadership team or the training or whatever isn't designed to say like, okay, now let's focus on the being and let's help you like to bring that out. Because to your point, like individuals have just completely armored up and shut that down and like casketed that away, to where that's where we're saying, like, in order to really focus in on the how and the being, you got to kind of like turn inward and like find that light and kind of bring it back to shine, because we've been kind of conditioned in a way to not do that. But I think the leaders that are really excelling, and I think the leaders hopefully that we'll be talking to, are the ones that, and that I think will be one of our questions, is like, how did you go through that, transition from the doer to the being, and how do you have that confidence to keep going when, it's not necessarily the norm of how organizations typically like invite you to be.
Yeah. So last episode, I had my Red Hot Chili Peppers
Yeah,
story, and this time I'll use a cultural reference to, the amazing boxer and personality Mike Tyson, and he was talking about being great and the
yeah,
fact that he'd always been told that he was great, and of course, legendary boxer, and that he's now focused on being not great but good, because he said there are a lot of great people.
right,
And when you meet them or you really spend time with them, you realize they're not so good.
yeah,
And so, how can you be good to be great? And I
right,
think that's another cultural shift that's occurred once again over the past, I'd say, since the early 2000s, where the weekend was the weekend and there wasn't this 24-hour cycle of sharing, etc.
yeah,
And people were allowed to separate who they were at the office with who they were at home or wherever. And now with the transparency
yeah,
that exists, the newest members of the workforce are refusing, and I think we're all now waking up to this and refusing to just be led by subject matter greatness. We want goodness too.
right,
And for some people, that's just an awakening.
right,
To your point, it's like, oh, I'm allowed to, or I'm required to,
right,
or asked to bring my goodness forth. To others, it's a little bit of an assault because they're like, oh, I don't really do a lot of good things. I kind of rely on my greatness. So, so
well, yeah,
yeah, talk a little bit about that, because for people who look inside and they're like, oh, I haven't, we all have goodness, I believe,
yeah,
but they haven't developed it. How do you talk to your clients about bringing that out or examining that? Because I think that light is that goodness. And that's really, really important. And I think for some people, they say, you want to know what? How do I just kind of get out of this mold where I can just go somewhere and be great?
right,
And you and I have experience with clients where they just say, honestly, maybe I have to step down from being a people leader or someone that's influencing more people, because I just want to focus on the greatness that I bring that's in my subject matter, and not
right,
have to be relied on to be someone
right.
that makes others feel well by shining the light on them.
Yeah, I think in how to get people to do that is really being clear on why are they even wanting to get into a coaching engagement. That's why, like, it's almost like for me to partner with someone, I want them to like beg, like, oh my gosh, I want so desperately to have a coach that I can work through this, because that tells me that something has something within them is saying like what has been working isn't working, or I want to work with a coach because I so desperately want to get to this level, like I want to get to this, um, or I'm about ready to be burned out. And so, like, there's that sense of urgency around which you need that in order to change. Because what we're talking about here is like huge change and really figuring out the systems that you've put your body, like you've been trained, you trained yourself to be under, and having to change those habits and those systems. And so in order to really make it matter, there has to be something that is so important to make you want to do that, because it is, like I said before, hard. So getting clear on what is the goal, what is the thing that each client is really wanting. So you can keep that as your North Star to say, okay, if you want this, what's holding you back from that? And then helping them to go through different exercises or different things that help them to understand like who they are and what's holding them back, and what's their shadow side that they've developed. I call it their saboteurs. What are the saboteurs that they've developed over time to help protect them that they need to let go, so that they can just be more of who they want to be, instead of who they've been conditioned to be, whether it's by the organization or that they think. And also finding, um, giving them real concrete, like why it matters, because usually that is really heavy. When you're acting in a way that's contrary to who you want to be, it's heavy, it zaps your energy, so trying to make those correlations, again, it's trying to get to like, why does this matter? To give them something to like hold on to say like, this is going to be hard, but it's so important to me to try and change. Some people will say, I just don't think I can do it, and then it's maybe, but maybe I focus on this instead. Um, I had another thought, Chris, because you said I love the whole, I just want to be good versus great. Kind of makes me think about like, we need to slow down to speed up. So that was one of the other things in like trying to recognize how you want to be. We're going so fast and trying to be so great and so perfect that, to help people understand, like, if you actually slow down and give yourself space, it'll come through as far as, more of how you want to be, and provide you kind of clarity on what's not working, and, but that's a hard one too. It's like, I can't slow down. That doesn't make sense to me, so, anyways, hopefully that, just a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, um, that idea of good and great.
Mm-hmm.
I think as we work with folks, it is in the framework of good in order to be your greatest,
Right. Yes.
not focusing on greatness or
Yeah.
perfection. It's the goodness that brings about the greatness, and that's where that special sauce exists. And
Yeah.
I think you and I have had the benefit of working through and with wonderful coaches that have trained us in coaching,
Yeah.
and the concept
Absolutely.
of coaching as the opportunity to fall in love with yourself all over again, which is a funny phrase to think about,
Yeah.
but you've described having an interaction with a coachee recently, and their thought that it was going to be some type of workout of like, okay, you're
Yeah.
broken, so we're going to put you in a cast, or we're
Yeah.
going to make sure you go to this kind of, this um, workout where you can now fix yourself,
Yeah.
or some, for I'm Catholic, for where you're going to go to your confessional, and then you're going to
Yeah.
have the this penance that you're going to have to do, and then we'll fix you.
Yeah.
And it's really much more of an internal process, because the answers are within the person. So just
Right.
your thoughts on that as we as
Yeah.
we
And I
continue
think,
this
well,
conversation.
and yes, the work, what you and I are, because this particular individual that you're talking about is, a great example of like, I think the HR person said, just are you the type of coach that talks about all that feely stuff and like how, what are you thinking today and all that? And I was like, like, yes, and. So exactly what you're saying, Chris, is um, our coaching style and how we have learned and what has been hugely impactful and effective for us, and what I know and have experienced to be impactful with the people that we're already working with, is you have to get to the root. You have to go below the snorkeling and get to the scuba level, and you don't get there without getting into some of this rooted, taking off the armor and trying to figure out what's the shadows and the saboteurs that are holding you back. But at the end of the day, you and I both have like lots of years of corporate experience to be able to make that connection to say, and this is how it will help you show up as an even more effective leader. And this is how you will get better followership. And this is how, it will translate. Like, you have to do that, like, mirror reflection and do that work, which I've done, you've done. Like, you have to, and I know the leaders that we're going to talk to have done the work. And it is the hardest work, but I mean, it's like, it's the best feeling when you actually do that, to understand and have clarity around, like, this is what's important to me. This is why it matters. Here's what my values are that ground me, that anchor me, that help me through decision making, that help me to be clear on what my, leadership philosophy is when I'm working with people. And it just gives you a sense of like, breathing space, because you just have it as your own roadmap. So it provides you that compass to, whether it's on the personal side in an organization, whatever. So I think that's how I'll wrap up on my thoughts with that. I could go
Thanks,
on.
man. Thanks, Amanda. It's the perfect segue, I think, for the coming podcast episodes, because as we discussed last time,
Yeah.
going forward, we are going to be inviting leaders into this conversation and to be able to enrich the discussion about how they think about these things. And
Yeah.
as we think about all the different personality profiles of leaders and the personality, profile tools, we're going to have all different types of leaders we're going to be talking to. And so to get their perspectives, it's really going to be, I think, both fun and enlightening. So thank you, Amanda, for being the interviewee for this episode too. And just looking forward to the coming episodes as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Me too. It's going to be great. Thanks, Chris.
Have a good day.
Bye.
From this episode, I encourage you to think of one change you can make today to show up as the leader you aspire to be. Until next time, be well, my friends.